My friend's birthday toast destroying my life. I sit here, the low hum of the dishwasher mocking the silence that has become my unwelcome companion. Clara is upstairs, but the thought of lying beside her tonight feels like a betrayal. The whiskey burns, but it can't cauterize the wounds Martin ripped open that fateful day. His words, like shards of glass, keep swirling in my mind, dredging up memories I had tried so desperately to bury. Memories that threatened to shatter everything. It all started with a surprise party, a seemingly innocent celebration that quickly devolved into a nightmare of betrayal and revelation. My wife, Clara, meticulously planned the entire thing at Deluca's, our favorite Italian restaurant in Astoria. As she led me inside, I was blindsided by a chorus of surprise from everyone I loved. It was touching, overwhelming even, to feel so cherished. My family was there, my parents, my brother George and his wife Tina, and of course, Martin, my best friend, or so I thought. Little did I know, Martin's presence would unravel everything I held dear. Clara, radiant with happiness, raised her glass and announced, "All right, everyone, let's have a little fun with Matt tonight." Who's got a funny story about the birthday boy? How I sparkled with mischief as she scanned the room, and I blushed, bracing myself for some light-hearted embarrassment. But then, Martin stepped forward, his grip on his wine glass unusually tight, his knuckles almost white. Something was off. I'd known Martin for years, and I could see a strange glint in his eyes, a darkness that made my stomach clench. All right, I've got a story about Matt," he began, his voice laced with an unsettling undertone. "Matt and I, well, we've been through a lot together, haven't we?" The tension in the room was palpable. Clara watched Martin with a furrowed brow, and I shot her a nervous glance, desperately trying to convey that everything was fine. But Martin wasn't finished. He glanced at Clara, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Well, let's just say there's a story that Matt's kept buried for a long time." A silence descended, thick and suffocating. My mind raced, a desperate plea forming on my lips. "Martin, come on man, let's keep it fun." I felt Clara's hand rest on my knee under the table, a gesture of comfort that felt like a brand. I wanted to yank Martin outside, to silence him before he could utter another word, but I was frozen, paralyzed by a dread I couldn't explain. "Matt calls me up," Martin continued, his voice taking on a mocking tone. "This was years ago. He was all panicked and freaking out, begging me to meet him at McCall's. You all know the place, grimy bar on 5th. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd, but my heart was pounding. So I get there, and there he is. Turns out Matt here was in a little situation with a girl, not just any girl, but someone we all knew, someone close to us. My face paled, mortified. This wasn't a harmless anecdote. This was an expose. I knew Clara had no idea about this past mistake, its lapse in judgment that I had buried deep, convinced it was a closed chapter. "Martin," I pleaded through gritted teeth, "enough. You don't have to do this." But he ignored me, his voice growing louder, fueled by something that felt like malicious glee. "Come on, Matt, let's be honest here. It's been a secret long enough." I felt Clara's hand trembling on my knee. "Is that true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Clara, listen, it was nothing. It was just a stupid mistake." But Martin pressed on, relentless. "Oh, and you know what else? This girl told me she was actually in love with him. She was ready to leave her boyfriend, my old college roommate." The silence in the room was deafening, the air thick with shock and disbelief. I could see the devastation on Clara's face, her lip quivering as she whispered again, "Is that true? Clara, listen, it was nothing. It was just one kiss. It meant nothing. I was young and stupid, and I didn't want to hurt you." But Martin wasn't done. His eyes gleamed with venom as he delivered the final blow. "Oh, and by the way, remember when we all went on that ski trip?" Clara's face crumpled, and she bolted from the room. I chased after her, finding her standing alone under a streetlight in the parking lot, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Clara, please, just listen to me," I begged, reaching out to her. She took a step back, her voice barely above a whisper. "How could you? Matt, all this time, I thought you were someone I could trust, someone who loved me enough to be honest. Was it all a lie? I love you. Clara, those were just mistakes I made when I was young. They meant nothing." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "That's not the point. The point is that you kept it from me. You let me live in a lie. You lied every time you told me you loved me. Every time you made me feel like I was the only one." I was speechless, the weight of my deception crushing me. She turned away, wiping her tears, leaving me standing alone in the cold night air, feeling hollow and empty. When I went back inside, everyone was staring at me, their faces etched with judgment and disappointment. Martin was still at the table, nursing his wine glass, a smug look on his face. I walked over to him, my anger bubbling over. "What the hell was that, Martin?" I hissed, my voice low and dangerous. He shrugged, looking almost nonchalant. "I just thought it was time for the truth to come out." "The truth? You think this is the truth? You just destroy everything I have. Maybe I was tired of keeping your secrets," he said, a slight slur in his voice. Maybe I got sick of watching you pretend to be someone you're not. I shook my head, disgusted. I trusted you, Martin. You were supposed to be my friend. He sneered, his voice dripping with bitterness. Matt, you act like this perfect family man, and all I do is clean up your messes. I've been the one holding your secrets, listening to you justify everything. But what about me? What about the times I needed you? My head was spinning. What are you talking about? What have I not been there for you? You've always been there for me in the way that doesn't make you look bad. You throw me a bone here and there, sure, but you always left me in the shadow. And every time I tried to bring out my own struggles, you brushed me off. You were too busy with your perfect family life to bother with my problems. I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. Martin, we've been friends for over 20 years. I never realized you felt this way. Why wouldn't you just talk to me about it? He laughed, a hollow, empty sound. Because you never wanted to hear it, Matt. You were gone. I opened my mouth to argue, realizing with a sickening certainty that there might be a grain of truth in what he was saying. Over the years, I had been so caught up in my own life that I had failed to notice his growing resentment. But none of that justified what he had done. None of that gave him the right to tear my marriage, my family, apart. Look, Martin, I said, my voice barely holding back the anger and disappointment. If you had issues with me, you should have told me. You didn't need to blow up my entire life over stupid mistakes I made decades ago. He shook his head slowly, a bitter smile on his face. Maybe I did, Matt. Maybe I wanted you to feel what it's like to be left in the dark. There was nothing left to say to him. I turned and walked away, my heart heavy with betrayal and regret. I sought Clara out, hoping against hope for some sliver of understanding. Clara, I said, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you hide it? Matt, why didn't you tell me? I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Because I was afraid, I admitted, my voice cracking. I was terrified that you'd see me differently, that I'd lose you if you knew the truth. I was a coward, Clara, and I can't change that. I wish to God I could go back and undo it all. She nodded slowly. I needed to hear that. She said quietly. I needed to know that it wasn't just because you didn't care, that you at least regretted it. I reached for her hand, my voice filled with desperation. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worth trusting again. For a long moment, she said nothing. Finally, she squeezed my hand, her grip firm. I'm not promising it will be easy, she said, her voice soft but steady. But I'm willing to try. I still love you, and I think you still love me too. Tears pricked my eyes, and I squeezed her hand in return, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in what felt like an eternity. I do, Clara, more than anything. The storm I'd weathered had left behind a path of destruction, but it had also cleared the way for something new, something stronger to grow. The aftermath was a journey of rebuilding, of confronting the past, and of fighting for a future that might still be salvageable. Clara took the kids and stayed with her sister, leaving me alone in the house that felt suddenly cold and empty. For weeks, we lived separate lives, the chasm between us seemingly insurmountable. But there was a wall between us, one I didn't know if I'd ever be able to break down. Things were different. We were like strangers living under the same roof. I tried everything, flowers, apologies, but every time I can see the pain in her eyes. She didn't say it out loud if she could ever trust me again. One day, I finally broke. Clara, please, I'm trying here. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me what it will take to fix this. She looked at me, her face weary, and for the first time in months, there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. I don't know if you can fix this, Matt, she said quietly. I don't know if we can fix this. You broke something, and I don't know if it can ever go back to the way it was. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. I shattered her trust, and no amount of apologies could change that. But I couldn't give up on us. It wasn't easy. Every session felt like peeling back layers of hurt and resentment, exposing raw wounds that hadn't yet healed. But through it all, I held on to one hope. If I showed her how committed I was, she'd eventually find it in her heart to forgive me. Then one evening, Matt, she said, her voice has a small crack in it, I think we should go back to Deluca's together. Just the two of us. I was stunned. The idea of going back to the place where everything had fallen apart seemed crazy. If you're sure, I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. I'll do whatever it takes. When we arrived at Deluca's, the smells, the dim light in the cozy table, it all brought back memories of that night. Clara was quiet as we sat down. For a while we ate in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts. Finally she sat down her fork and looked at me. Matt, she began slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you really keep those secrets from me? I took a deep breath because I was afraid. I admitted, my voice cracking. I was terrified that you'd see me differently. Did I lose you if you knew the truth? I was a coward, Clara, and I can't change that. I wish to God I could go back and undo it all. She nodded. I needed to hear that. She said quietly, I needed to know that it wasn't just because you didn't care, that you at least regret. I reached for her hand. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worth trusting again. For a long moment, finally, she squeezed my hand, her grip firm. I'm not promising it will be easy. She said, her voice soft but steady. But I'm willing to try. I still love you, and I think you still love me too. Tears pricked my eyes, and I squeezed your hand, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. I do, Clara, more than anything. Then the months that followed, Clara and I began to rebuild our life together. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt, but we were learning to trust again, to forgive, and to move forward with a deeper understanding of each other. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Clara turned to me and smiled a soft, genuine smile that made my heart ache with gratitude. You know, she said, her voice quiet, I think I'd go through it all again if it meant we'd end up here. I took her hand, holding it tightly. Me too, Clara, me too. But the journey to get here hadn't been easy, and a part of me still couldn't shake the fear that our new life as fragile as it felt. Matt, you've been so patient these last few months. I know I haven't made it easy. I squeezed your hand, feeling the rough edges of our shared scars, physical, emotional. Clara, I don't expect it to be easy. I hurt you. I know it will take time to get back to where we were. She looked away, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The thing, I don't know if I want to go back to where we were. I think that's what kept eating at me, Matt. I realized that maybe we were both just coasting comfortable in our routines, ignoring the cracks. Well, he may have ripped those cracks wide open. Mention of Martin's name still stirred up a mixture of bitterness and sadness. His betrayal wasn't just about revealing secrets, it was the way he torn into me, exposing my mistakes in a way that made them feel Butler was right. Our marriage hadn't been perfect before the party. Maybe you're right, I said slowly. I think I wanted things to stay easy, to pretend that as long as we were together, everything was fine. But I know now that's not enough. Determination. I think we both deserve more than fine. We deserve something, really, even if it means going through hell to get there. Feeling a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time, I realized that maybe the real gift wasn't forgiveness, even the chance to start over. It was the opportunity to build something new, something authentic without all the weight of the past hanging over us. In the months that followed, Clara and I learned how to let go of that weight bit by bit. We go for long walks. It wasn't just about what I'd done. We'd both been holding back, clinging to the illusion of perfection. One night as we were sitting together on the porch, I finally asked her something that had been eating at me since the day she'd come back to the house. Clara, I began, my voice hesitant. Why did you come back? She looked at me and then let out a long breath as if she'd been waiting for the question. Because as much as you hurt me, Matt, I realized that I didn't want to face life without you. I thought about it, believe me, but every time I tried to imagine a life where you weren't there, it felt like there was this hole that nothing else could fill. Her words hit me like a wave. I reached for her hand, pulling her closer, and whispered, thank you for not giving up on me, on us. Thank you for fighting for me even when I wasn't sure I'd come back. We held each other in the dark, and in that moment I felt more connected to her than I had in years. It wasn't just love. It was a deeper understanding, a commitment to seeing each other for who we really were. One afternoon, Clara came home with a surprise. She handed me a small envelope. What's this? I asked, raising an eyebrow, grinning. Inside was a brochure for a cabin retreat in there. It was a place we'd always talked about visiting, but it never gotten around to. Life had always been too busy to fall with our other priorities. We leave next week, she said, watching me closely. Just as no distractions. I think we need a real reset, a fresh start away from everything. I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and relief. The trip turned out to be exactly what we needed, nestled among the trees. We went hiking. We left, we shared stories, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. On our last night at the cabin, Claire and I sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate. She turned to me. You know, Matt, she said softly, I think I can finally say that I've forgiven you. Truly. It doesn't mean I've forgotten, but I've let go of the anger. I'm ready to move forward with you. I felt a lump form in my throat as I looked at her. To give us a second chance, Clara. I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice. Returning home from that trip, life felt different. Clara and I have both changed. Not in ways that erased the past, but in ways that allowed us to accept it and move forward. We found a rhythm, a balance, learning to communicate more openly and honestly than we ever had before. The real test came on our next anniversary. Clara suggested that we returned to Deluca's, the very place where everything had unraveled. The thought made my stomach twist, but I trusted her. Walking into Deluca's felt like stepping into a past life, the red checkered tablecloths, the cozy dim light. It was all the same. We were no longer haunted by what had happened. We were there to reclaim our story, to write a new chapter. We ordered our favorite dishes, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship, and for the first time as we finished dinner, you know, Matt, I'm grateful for everything we've been through. I think it's made us stronger. I reached for her hand, feeling a rush of love and gratitude. I feel the same way. I wouldn't trade any of it. She smiled. Here's to us, she said, raising her glass. You are imperfect, messy, beautiful life. Feeling a sense of closure, of hope, or of something solid and real. Leaving to Lucas that night hand in hand, I felt like a man who'd been given a second chance at life, and I know I was the luckiest man in the world. The scars were still there, Yes, in the months and years that followed, Clara and I continued to grow, learning from each other, never taking a single day for granted, on understanding that love isn't perfect, a commitment to stand by each other no matter how hard it gets. And in the end, I realized that Martin, in his own twisted way, by forcing us to confront the truth, I never heard from him again. Some relationships are meant to be left in the past. As I sit here years later watching the sunset on another day and filled with a quiet, I survived the storm. But more importantly, so did my marriage. And as Clara sits beside me, our hands intertwine. I know that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. It's about resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to keep choosing each other day after day. So, Reddit, after hearing my story, do you think I handled this whole situation the best way I could? I'm really struggling to shake off the guilt and uncertainty, even years later. I'm curious to hear your perspectives. Were there things I should have done differently? Was my reaction to Martin justified? And most importantly, do you think Clara was right to give me a second chance? Or was I ultimately undeserving of her forgiveness? I'm open to any and all feedback, no matter how harsh. Lay it on me.